We are, we're basically the most educated, hyper-connected society in human history, right? I mean, we literally have the sum of all human knowledge just sitting right in our pocket.
Oh, absolutely. It's all right there.
Yeah, but here's the crazy part. Why are we graduating millions of people who are, well, functionally obsolete in the modern
Yeah,
workforce?
it's a really brutal paradox to confront. But when you actually look at the sheer numbers, like over 7 billion people on the planet,
Mm.
and you combine that with automation and AI just aggressively shrinking the need for traditional human labor,
Right?
the math becomes terrifyingly clear. We're dealing with an economic landscape that, quite frankly, simply doesn't care about a piece of paper anymore.
Yeah, I mean, simply holding a degree used to be the golden ticket. Now, it's barely a baseline. The world is just saturated with unemployed or, underemployed graduates.
Exactly. People who spent 4, 6, maybe 8 years sitting in classrooms,
Hmm.
but who lack the actual adaptable intelligence the market is desperate for right now.
Which means you're essentially looking at the unluckiest generation in history, if you are still playing by the old rules, that is.
Because those old rules, they were built for an industrial era that just no longer exists. Today, the scarcest commodity isn't a credential.
No, not at all.
It's genuine, dynamic intelligence. It's the ability to learn, to adapt, and to synthesize complex information way faster than a machine can.
And that brings us to the actual mission for this deep dive. Today we're exploring the core concepts of this Brazilian educational manifesto called Como Estudar para Vencer, which translates to How to Study to Win.
Right, and it's heavily inspired by the methodologies of Professor Pierluigi Piazzi.
Exactly. But we aren't just going to leave these concepts in the theoretical realm. We are laser focusing them on you, the listener, because this entire philosophy is built for the person who wants to start transforming their intelligence right now.
Start today.
Yes, not next semester, not when you finally feel motivated, today. But to do that, we have to start by fundamentally redefining what intelligence actually is.
Which is so crucial because it is not a fixed genetic trait. It's not some lottery ticket that you either won or lost the day you were born. Intelligence is a muscle.
Right.
But to develop that muscle, we first have to completely dismantle the grand illusion of modern education. We have to unlearn almost everything society has conditioned us to believe about what it actually means to study.
Okay, let's unpack that grand illusion, because we obviously can't build new habits today if we don't recognize why our old habits have completely failed us.
Absolutely.
There is this incredibly provocative idea in the text that essentially claims everyone studies to get a grade, but almost no one actually studies to learn.
Yeah, it's a pretty radical perspective. The argument in the manifesto goes as far as labeling modern schools as theaters of atrocities.
Well, I mean, obviously we have to note that's a very passionate, controversial view from the author, and we're not taking sides here, just reporting what's in the text. But what do they mean by that?
Well, the premise is that institutions have essentially become drop-off centers. Parents drop their kids off, expecting the school to do all the heavy cognitive lifting.
Right, like an intellectual daycare.
Exactly. But the biological reality of how the human brain actually acquires knowledge makes that completely impossible.
And this is the distinction that just blew my mind. The text draws a hard line between understanding, which in Portuguese is entender, and learning, which is aprender.
Yes, they are not the same thing at all.
Not even close.
Yeah.
And the book argues that in the classroom, you only understand. You do not learn in the classroom.
Neurologically speaking, that is spot on. When you're sitting in a classroom and a brilliant professor is up there explaining a complex topic, you are merely understanding. You're following their logic.
You're just gathering data.
Right. Your brain is a passive receptor. You are definitely not learning.
It makes me think of like sitting in my living room watching a cooking show. Say they're making a really complicated multi-layered cake. I watch the chef do it. I see the ingredients. I nod my head.
You're tracking along with it.
Yeah. I understand the recipe perfectly. But I haven't actually learned how to bake that cake until I go into my own kitchen, get flour all over the counter, completely mess up the frosting, and physically do it myself.
That is the perfect visualization of the cognitive gap. In the classroom, the teacher is the one baking the cake. You're just watching.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Actual learning like.
Yeah.
The physical wiring of new knowledge into the neural networks of your brain. That only happens when you're alone, actively engaging with the material, wrestling with it.
Which means that studying by, Cramming for an exam the night before is basically just memorizing the ingredients list so you can recite it back to the teacher the next day.
Exactly. It's what the text calls superficial study. Superficial study satisfies an immediate, short-term need. It holds the data in your working memory just long enough to pass the test.
And
then, because no permanent neural pathways were ever formed, that information vanishes.
so you pass the test on Friday, and by Tuesday, your mind is totally blank.
Completely.
Okay, so if learning only happens when we are alone, wrestling with the material, we have to talk about the timing. When exactly is this supposed to happen?
Well, the timing is the absolute crux of this entire methodology. There is a golden rule here, and it is beautifully uncompromising.
Let's hear it.
Aula data, aula estudada, H-O-J-E. Class given, class studied today.
Today, not on the weekend, not right before the midterm.
Today, period. And there is a brilliant, undeniable biological mechanism driving this urgency. It comes down to the neurology of sleep.
Oh, specifically how our hippocampus processes short-term memory, right?
Exactly.
I love this part. Let's talk about the brain's nightly maintenance routine, the Faxina diaria, the daily cleaning.
Yeah, so think about the sheer volume of data your brain absorbs in a single day. The color of a passing car, the feeling of your shoes, a random comment a coworker made, what she had for lunch.
Plus maybe a fascinating lecture you attended.
Right. It's millions of data points.
Yeah.
If your brain tried to store all of that permanently, you would overload. So evolutionary biology gave us a mechanism.
A built-in cleaning service.
Precisely. When you go to sleep, your brain essentially runs a massive sweep. It looks at all the past data you collected and asks, did we use this? If the answer is no, it literally tosses that information into the Lixo da Memoria, the memory trash bin.
It's exactly like a smartphone's RAM cache.
Oh, that's a great comparison.
Right. Like if I have 50 apps open, my phone runs perfectly all day because that data is in the short-term memory, the RAM. But if I don't actively hit save and move that data to the permanent hard drive...
The moment the phone reboots overnight, the cache is cleared.
Yes, it just wipes it to keep the system running fast for the next day.
That is an incredibly accurate parallel. If you spend 3 hours in a seminar, understanding everything perfectly, taking amazing notes, then you just go to sleep.
It's gone, yeah.
Your brain treats that seminar exactly the same way it treats the memory of what you had for breakfast. It hits delete.
Okay, so how do we intervene? How do we scream at our brain, hey, keep this, don't delete this before we go to sleep?
By creating cognitive friction. You have to actively process that data before your head hits the pillow. And the most effective way to signal to your brain that something is vital is through physical analog tools.
We're talking old school.
Very. Books, paper, a pencil. You have to write, you have to draft, you have to summarize by hand. No screens, no keyboards.
Okay, I have to push back here on behalf of every listener who wants to start right now.
Fair enough.
Let's say I've just worked an 8-hour shift. Maybe I also took an evening certification class. I get home at 8:30 p.m. I am exhausted.
Sure.
The absolute last thing I want to do is sit down at my kitchen table with a literal wooden pencil and write out summaries. Is that level of analog friction genuinely necessary in an era where I can just type it out in half the time?
It is the friction itself that saves the memory.
Wait, really? The friction is the point?
Yes. When you type on a keyboard, the motor action is identical whether you are typing the letter A or the letter Z. It is a uniform, low-effort movement. Easy input equals easy deletion.
Oh, that makes sense.
But writing by hand with a pencil is a highly complex neurological task. You are utilizing fine motor skills, visual tracking, and cognitive synthesis simultaneously.
You're physically carving out those letters.
Exactly. That massive expenditure of energy is the exact trigger that tells your hippocampus, hey, we are working incredibly hard on this concept. Do not throw this in the trash bin tonight.
So the exhaustion I'm trying to avoid by typing is actually the active ingredient in building my intelligence.
Precisely. Which brings us to the elephant in the room.
Motivation?
Right. We know the global economy demands intelligence. We know we have to build it actively. We know we have to do it today, before we sleep, using physical friction. But how do we overcome the intense, visceral reluctance to simply start?
Yeah, because knowing what to do has never been the human problem. It's actually doing it. And this is where we get into what feels like, honestly, deep psychological warfare against our own habits.
It really is a battle.
There's this intense concept in the text we need to explore about defeating the mind. The phrasing used is actually treating your mind like a slave.
Yeah, it's strong language.
It's a jarring word, but the core concept is about breaking the illusion that you are your mind's impulses.
From an evolutionary standpoint, your brain's primary directive is to conserve energy to keep you alive. So, when you get home at 8:30 p.m., your mind is functioning perfectly by telling you, go sit on the couch, turn on the TV, it's too cold to sit at the desk.
We'll just study tomorrow?
Exactly. Your mind is doing its job. The shift happens when you realize you do not have to obey it. You have to separate your conscious will from your biological instinct.
You essentially have to bully your own evolutionary laziness.
Pretty much.
But what if laziness isn't my problem? What if I'm paralyzed by perfectionism? I talk to so many people who don't start today because they don't have the perfect notebook yet, or their desk is messy. They're waiting for the stars to align.
Perfectionism. It is almost always just a highly sophisticated, socially acceptable disguise for procrastination.
Ugh, that's true.
And to combat that, the text offers an absolute lifeline of a concept, the 70% rule.
I love this rule. It is the ultimate antidote for anyone listening right now who feels stuck. Walk us through it.
The rule is remarkably simple. If you want to implement a new habit or start a project, do not wait until conditions are 100% perfect.
Because you'll wait forever.
Exactly. You will literally wait forever. The exact moment you hit 70% readiness, like you have a decent pencil, a piece of scrap paper, and just 20 minutes before bed you move. You start immediately.
Because action creates its own momentum. Inertia feels impossibly heavy when you're just standing still, but the moment you take that first physical step, the friction starts to fade.
And if the 70% rule isn't enough to get you out of the chair, there is another rather unorthodox tactic for breaking through procrastination.
Oh, right, the concept of raivajista.
Yes, or just anger.
This flipped my entire understanding of self-help on its head. Usually we're told to be, like, endlessly gentle with ourselves. Oh, you didn't study today. Forgive yourself. Take a bubble bath. Try again tomorrow.
Right, the toxic positivity approach.
Yeah. But this approach says if you catch yourself making excuses, you should actually harness a positive, directed form of anger against yourself.
It is an emotional judo flip. You use the adrenaline of frustration. Be genuinely mad at your own lack of action. Be angry that you are letting your biological instinct rob you of your future intelligence.
Wow.
Use that physical spike in energy to forcefully push yourself into the chair and pick up the pencil.
I mean, it requires a serious level of emotional maturity to do that without spiraling into self-loathing, though.
It absolutely does. And this connects directly to the principles of emotional intelligence.
Right.
Particularly the frameworks popularized by Daniel Goleman that the text references.
Right.
Building real intelligence requires us to systematically unlearn the emotional habits we formed in childhood.
Because children are entirely reactive, right?
Yeah, exactly. They blame the weather, the teacher, the unfair rules. To build the kind of intellect that survives the modern economy, you have to transition to absolute, uncompromising adult responsibility.
No playing the victim.
None. If you don't study today, it's not because you were tired. It's a choice you made.
Okay, so we've fought the mental battle. We've harnessed our just anger. We didn't wait for perfection. We used our 70% readiness.
We're at the desk.
We are sitting at the desk. Now what? Let's give the listener the specific, manageable actions they can take right now, the micro habits that produce macro intelligence.
Well, the most accessible, universally applicable habit is what we might call the 15-minute magic. Just 15 minutes of deep reading a day.
But there's a catch, right? It has to be in actual physical books.
Yes.
Not skimming articles online, not scrolling through a social media feed, physical books.
The medium matters immensely. Reading a physical book demands sustained, linear focus. It forces your brain to hold a narrative or an argument over time rather than jumping from hyperlink to hyperlink.
Which is how we usually read online.
Exactly. And just 15 minutes of this daily expands your vocabulary, massively improves your syntactical ability to write, and sharpens your critical thinking.
Yeah.
And absolutely everyone has 15 minutes.
But reading random books without a broader purpose is just, well, intellectual wandering, which is why the next crucial step is defining exactly what you are building this intelligence for.
Goal setting is non-negotiable. And the mechanics of it are deeply rooted in the psychology of commitment, echoing the principles of people like Brian Tracy.
You can't just hold a goal in your head.
No, you must write it down on paper.
Why is the physical act of writing the goal so important? I know we talked about the pencil friction for studying, but what about for goals?
Because the mind operates instantaneously. You can close your eyes and imagine a massive, finished house in a millisecond.
True.
But reality takes time to materialize. If your goals remain only in your instantaneous mind, they feel like daydreams. The moment ink hits paper, you are forcing an abstract thought into the physical world. It's the first tangible step of creation.
The metaphor often used is a farmer planting a seed. You plant the seed, you water it, and you have to tolerate the time it takes to grow. If you don't write it down, you aren't planting anything. You're just waiting to see what grows on its own.
And what grows on its own are weeds. Without written goals, you become like a leaf blown around by the wind. You just go wherever the global economy or the algorithm pushes you.
Yeah, that's a scary thought. So to keep the brain sharp enough to pursue those goals, we have to talk about the physical maintenance of the mind.
Yes, this is super a method.
Right. It's a fantastic acronym in Portuguese meaning to overcome, but practically it outlines the daily enemies of brain agility that we have to actively fight. And number one is anxiety.
Anxiety is an absolute intellect killer because it forces your cognitive resources entirely into the future, trying to solve problems that haven't even happened yet.
Leaving you zero processing power for the present moment.
Precisely.
And number two is routine.
Routine is dangerous because it puts the brain on autopilot. When you drive the exact same route to work or do the same tasks in the exact same order, your brain stops forging new connections.
It just coasts.
It coasts on existing neural pathways. You have to actively inject novelty, take a different street, learn a new chord on a guitar to force neuroplasticity.
The philosophy also demands regular physical exercise, which increases blood flow to the brain, and it aggressively attacks the myth of multitasking.
Oh, multitasking is a complete myth.
Doing one task at a time is the only way to avoid mental overload. Multitasking just dilutes your focus and guarantees superficial processing.
Now, if you want to tie all these micro habits together, the reading, the goal setting, the single tasking, there is a fascinating psychological tool you can use to actually rewire how you view yourself.
Yes, the daily declaration technique. I found this totally mesmerizing because it explains exactly how to bypass that voice in your head that tells you you aren't smart enough or disciplined enough. Walk us through the mechanics of this.
It relies on altering your brainwave state. During normal, awake day, your brain operates in beta waves, fast, alert, analytical. This is where your conscious mind acts like a guard dog, rejecting any ideas that don't match your current self-image. If you say, I am a genius, while in beta, the guard dog barks and says, no, you're not, you failed math.
So how do we sneak past the guard dog?
By slowing the brain waves down into the alpha state. You sit comfortably, close your eyes, and slowly count backward from 20 to 1.
Just 20 to 1.
Yeah. This rhythmic, slow counting lowers your brainwave frequency. You enter a deeply relaxed, highly receptive state. The guard dog goes to sleep. At that exact moment, you vividly visualize and declare your goals.
And we are talking about two specific types of goals here, right?
Yes, tangible goals like hitting a specific salary metric or buying a house. And intangible goals like the ability to concentrate deeply for 2 hours or to read faster.
Yeah, because you're in the alpha state.
Those directives bypass the conscious resistance and are fed directly into your subconscious.
You are literally reprogramming your operating system at the root level. You are shifting your identity from someone who struggles to focus into someone who is a relentless, dedicated learner.
It perfectly aligns your subconscious identity with the conscious friction you are applying every night with that pencil.
Wow. So bringing this all together, the global economy is shifting faster than ever. Degrees aren't a safety net anymore. But the incredibly empowering truth is that genuine intelligence is a choice.
It is a daily choice.
You don't learn when the professor is talking. You merely gather data. You learn at home tonight with a physical pencil in your hand, signaling to your brain that this information matters.
And if you are listening to this right now, thinking about everything you need to change, remember the 70% rule. Do not wait for the perfect notebook. Do not wait for the weekend.
Start today.
Start messy. Action is the only thing that cures inertia. Life is way too short to be small.
Take absolute responsibility for your own mind. We can't fix the education system overnight, but we can control what happens in our own brains between 8 p.m. and midnight. Which leaves us with one final thought for you to explore. Think about everything you've heard, read, or experienced today.
All that data.
Right. As you put your head on your pillow tonight, ask yourself, which of those valuable pieces of information is your brain about to sweep into the trash bin simply because you didn't take 5 minutes to write it down?